Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name is Elena. I'm 32, and I'm tired. Not just tired from a long day, but the kind of tiredness that seeps into your bones, the kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about love, about yourself. And there's this secret, this weight I carry every day that I haven't told anyone, until now. We only went on a few dates, I'll say, almost like rehearsing a line. Because that's the truth. Just a handful of nights, a handful of conversations, and yet somehow I knew. I knew he'd be a good father. Not because he said it or promised it, but because there was something in the way he looked at the world, and at me, that made me believe it, deeply, instinctively. So when I found out I was pregnant, I told him. I told him the baby was his. It wasn't just the pregnancy that made me do it. It was the hope, the desperate hope that maybe this could be more than just a few dates. Maybe it could be something real. Because before all this, before the silence between us grew so loud, I believed in us. I believed in him. At first, we were a wildfire. We'd meet for coffee and end up losing ourselves in each other's hands, in the heat of stolen kisses that tasted like possibility. There was laughter that came easy, electric touches that sent sparks down my spine, and long nights where his arms felt like the only place I wanted to be. I remember how safe it felt to curl up against his chest, listening to his heartbeat like it was a secret lullaby just for me. But safety doesn't always mean warmth. Over time, something shifted. I can't even point to when exactly. The moment felt like a slow leak, a soft drip that eventually drained the room of everything that made us us. The kisses became brief, rehearsed, like we were going through the motions because that's what people in relationships do. Cuddling turned stiff. His arms, once a refuge, felt tight, not comforting. A hug from him was less a gesture of love and more a way to hold me in place, like a command rather than an embrace. I found myself pulling away without meaning to. I craved the closeness but felt the growing distance at the same time, like two magnets pushed to the same pole. It was confusing and heartbreaking all at once. And the worst part? The silence. Not the peaceful kind that follows a comfortable day, but the heavy, aching quiet that fills a room when two people are living parallel lives inside the same house. When I'd reach for his hand, he'd pull away, distracted by a phone or lost in some invisible world I couldn't reach. When I tried to talk, he'd nod, eyes glazed, already checked out. The sex that used to be urgent and tender became a chore neither of us wanted to finish, leaving me feeling invisible and unwanted. I started to question myself. Was I asking too much? Was I imagining things? Or worse, was he losing interest? I remember this one night, sitting on the edge of the bed, my fingers tracing the curve of my belly, soft and round now with the life growing inside me. He was there too, but distant, like a shadow standing just beyond reach. I tried to lean into him, to rest my head on his shoulder, but he stiffened, barely tolerating my touch. That night, I realized something had changed, not just between us, but inside me too. I wasn't the same woman who had fallen so deeply in love with those few dates. I was scared. I was uncertain. And somehow, I still wanted to believe. That was the moment I knew the story I had been telling myself, the one where he'd be the father I imagined, where love would conquer every doubt, was becoming something else. Something fragile and uncertain. And I'm still holding on to that hope, even as the silence grows louder. His name is Mark. He's a firefighter, steady, strong, the kind of man who faces chaos every day but somehow always comes home like he's carrying a world of silence on his shoulders. I admire him for that bravery, but sometimes I feel like I'm living with a ghost. Last night was one of those nights. We'd just finished dinner, simple pasta, nothing fancy, but the house was cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I reached across the table, hoping for some kind of connection, just a small sign that we were still a team. Instead, Mark barely glanced up from his phone before reaching out and squeezing my hand. It was the kind of touch I used to crave. Now, it felt mechanical, like he was checking off a box labeled affection. I wanted to pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I tried to speak. "Mark," I said softly, "can we talk?" He looked up, eyes tired but alert. "About what?" "About us." He frowned, and I could tell I'd already lost him. "We're fine," he said, standing up and moving to the couch. But we weren't fine. I felt invisible. Not because he wasn't touching me, he tried, often, but because his hands never quite reached what I needed. His hugs felt like shields, his kisses like apologies rather than promises. I craved the kind of intimacy that didn't just brush the surface, that dug beneath the skin. He's a man who's used to action. When I'm upset, he reaches for me, not with words, but with hands and arms. Sometimes he pulls me close, tries to kiss the hurt away, but I pull back. I need him to see the real pain first. To hear the words I can barely say out loud. The misunderstanding grows every day. Yesterday morning, I woke early, the baby kicking softly inside me. I wanted to share that moment with Mark, to feel like we were still connected by more than just this tiny life I was carrying. I reached for him, but he was already halfway out the door, distracted by the call of duty. "I'm sorry," he said, a quick kiss on my forehead before he left. "I'll make it up tonight." But tonight never came. Instead, when he got home, he was exhausted, too drained for anything but silence. I lay awake, the emptiness stretching between us, a hollow echo where I once felt safety. We're both trying, but it feels like we're speaking different languages. He shows love through touch, firm, protective, physical. I need love through words, through vulnerability, through shared moments that feel more than just habit. I want to tell him, I'm scared. I'm lonely. I'm still here. But the words stick in my throat, tangled in fear of rejection or misunderstanding. And so the quiet grows. This misunderstanding isn't about what he does, it's about what I need him to see, that beneath my exhaustion, beneath the fear, I'm still trying to hold on. But sometimes, the hardest thing to say is the one thing that could save us both. Mark's footsteps echoed down the hallway as he came toward me, his hand reaching out before I could even think about pulling away. It was late, the kind of late where everything should feel quiet and safe, but all I felt was a tightening inside, like a coil ready to snap. He sat beside me on the couch and slipped an arm around my shoulders. I wanted to lean in, to melt into the warmth I used to crave. Instead, I stiffened, pulling my body just a fraction away as if distance could protect me. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low and hopeful. "You're quiet tonight." I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just tired." He nudged me playfully, a light slap on my hip meant to be teasing. Instead, I flinched like he'd hit me, surprised by the sharpness of my own reaction. He stopped, eyes searching mine. "Elena? What's wrong?" "Nothing," I whispered, my throat tight. I didn't want to explain this numbness, this strange emptiness that had replaced the heat I once felt when he touched me. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, gentle, familiar, but my lips stayed still, unmoved. His hand slid to my neck, fingers tracing a path I used to follow with hunger, but now it felt like cold water on skin too tired to feel. "I miss you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I miss you too," I lied. The words felt like a betrayal, like admitting I longed for something I couldn't find anymore. He hesitated, then pulled me closer, fingers weaving into my hair. I closed my eyes, wanting to want it, to want him, but all I felt was a dull ache, a hollowness swallowing the old excitement. When his lips met mine, I didn't respond. No spark, no flutter in my chest. Just the weight of expectation pressing down on my ribs. He pulled back, confused. "Elena?" I'm sorry, I said, breaking away and standing abruptly. He reached for me again, but I stepped back, crossing my arms over my chest. I don't know how to do this anymore. He looked hurt, the kind of hurt that doesn't scream but seeps into the quiet spaces between us. Do what? Us, I whispered. I want to feel close to you. But every time we try, it turns into sex. And I don't know if I can. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering in his eyes. But that's how I show love. It's how I know you're still here. But it's not enough, I said, voice cracking. I need more than that. I need to feel like I'm not just your girlfriend or the woman carrying your child, I need to feel like me again. Like I'm more than this body you want to claim. He said nothing for a long moment. Then quietly, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose me, I said, tears stinging my eyes. Why does everything have to turn into sex? I wanted him to understand, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were only the beginning of a conversation I wasn't sure we were ready to have. The kitchen was dim, the soft glow from the overhead light casting long shadows on the walls. Mark had cooked dinner, a quiet effort to bridge the gap that had been growing between us for weeks. I wanted to believe it would help. I wanted to believe we could find our way back. But as we sat across from each other, the weight in my chest grew heavier with every bite I didn't really taste. Why don't you say anything? Mark finally broke the silence, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the quiet. I looked up, surprised by the sudden edge. Say what? That you're okay, he said, eyes searching mine like he was trying to read a foreign language. I swallowed the lump in my throat, the frustration swelling until I couldn't hold it back anymore. I'm not okay. The words came out louder than I meant, shattering the fragile calm like glass hitting the floor. I pushed my plate away, the clatter loud in the silence. Mark froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Elena, no, I said, voice cracking. No more pretending. I can't do this anymore, this silence, this pretending everything's fine when it's not. You think I'm okay because I'm quiet, but I'm not. I'm scared. I'm alone. And I lied to you. I lied because I thought it would make things easier, but it's only made everything worse. His eyes widened, confusion and hurt mixing in a way that made my heart break all over again. I told you the baby was yours, I whispered, the words tasting bitter. Not because I was sure. Not because I wanted to trap you. But because I hoped. I hoped you'd be different. I hoped you'd be the father I needed, the man I thought I loved. Tears spilled over then, unbidden, hot and raw. I wiped at them roughly, ashamed to be so broken in front of him. Mark didn't say anything. He just sat there, silent, like he didn't know how to reach me anymore. I wanted to scream at him to say something, anything, but all I could do was sit with the mess of emotions, anger, shame, grief, crashing over me in waves. After a long pause, I whispered, I don't even know who I am anymore. I thought I was strong. I thought I could handle this. But maybe I was just fooling myself. I looked at him then, really looked, searching for the man I'd believed in, the man I'd trusted with my whole heart. I'm sorry, I said, voice barely audible. I'm sorry for what I did. For telling you something I wasn't sure of. For expecting you to be something you're not. He finally spoke, voice gentle but tired. Elena, I'm not perfect. I don't always know how to show it the way you want. But I want to be here. For you. For the baby. I nodded, swallowing the lump of guilt and sadness. I don't know what comes next, I said honestly. But I know I can't keep pretending. Not to you. Not to myself. The moment hung between us, fragile and uncertain, like everything we thought we had might finally be slipping away. But maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something real. Days passed like shadows slipping through cracks, quiet, cold, unspoken. The house felt emptier than ever, even though Mark was there. Physically present but somehow distant, like a man carrying a weight too heavy to share. I watched him from across the room sometimes, trying to read the lines on his face. There were moments when his jaw tightened, where his eyes grew distant, staring out the window as if searching for answers somewhere beyond these walls. It wasn't anger I saw in him, it was exhaustion. A kind of sadness I recognized because it mirrored my own. He didn't lash out. He didn't retreat completely. He just became quieter, folding himself into silence like a fragile shell. I missed the man who held me close without conditions, who whispered promises instead of words left unsaid. But I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Every time I tried, I felt the familiar sting of rejection, not because he wanted to hurt me, but because he was lost too. One night, I caught him sitting alone on the porch, the baby monitor silent inside. His shoulders slumped, his fingers tracing patterns on the railing. When he saw me watching, he gave a small, tired smile, the kind that held both apology and distance. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied, my voice softer than I wanted. "I'm sorry," he said after a pause. "I don't know how to fix this." "Me neither," I admitted. The honesty between us felt like fragile glass, ready to break but also oddly freeing. I wanted to reach out, to tell him everything, the fears, the loneliness, the hope that still flickered despite everything. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I just sat beside him, close but not touching. We shared the quiet, the kind that once would have been filled with warmth. I thought about all the times I told myself I could handle this alone, that I was strong enough to carry the weight of our brokenness. But the truth was, I was tired. And scared. And so deeply guilty for the secrets I'd carried, for the hopes I'd pinned on a man who was still figuring out how to love me. That night, I looked up at the stars and wondered if love was enough, or if it was just a story we tell ourselves when everything else feels uncertain. Could we try again? Could we find a way back from this silence? Or was it time to let go, to stop hoping for something that might never come? I didn't have an answer yet. But for the first time in a long time, I knew I had to choose, for the baby, for Mark, for myself. And maybe that was the beginning of something new. It wasn't easy. We didn't wake up one morning and magically find our way back to what we had. But slowly, painfully, we started to talk. Not about the baby, not about the future or the plans we'd made in happier times, but about the now. About the fears and frustrations we'd kept buried, the distance we'd built without realizing. "I don't want to lose you," Mark said one night, his voice rough with emotion. "But I don't know how to be the man you need." "I don't either," I admitted, my fingers tracing his hand, careful and tentative. We agreed to slow down, to stop forcing the physical closeness before the emotional space was there. Boundaries that felt strange but necessary, a promise to be patient with ourselves and each other. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Mark pulled me into a hug that was different, no demands, no expectations, just a shared breath, a silent acknowledgement that we were still here. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and for a moment, the cold inside me softened. Later, I found him sleeping on the couch, the baby monitor softly humming nearby. His face was peaceful, unguarded in a way I hadn't seen in months. I hesitated, then brushed a kiss on his forehead, the smallest gesture, but for me, it carried everything. Forgiveness. Hope. A tentative beginning. We don't know what the future holds. Maybe we'll falter again. Maybe this is just a pause in a story still being written. But for now, I choose to hold on, to the man I once believed in, to the baby growing inside me, and to the fragile, imperfect love that still connects us. And that, I think, is enough. If you're still here, listening, I want to tell you something I've learned, something I'm still learning, actually. My name is Elena. I'm 29. And for a long time I thought love was supposed to feel easy, like a storybook promise where desire and safety danced hand in hand. But real love? It's messy. It's raw. It's the quiet moments when you don't know how to say what's breaking inside you. It's the times you want someone, but your heart just won't catch up. It's the slow unraveling of who you thought you were when the person you trusted starts to feel like a stranger. I told Mark the baby was his because I believed in him. I wanted him to be the father I dreamed of, the man who could hold me when everything else felt uncertain. But hoping isn't enough. Not always. And sometimes, even the best intentions don't save us from losing parts of ourselves along the way. What I learned is that desire isn't just physical. It's emotional, too. It's the invisible thread of trust, vulnerability, and being seen. When that thread frays, no amount of touch can mend the wound. You can kiss a person's lips 1,000 times, but if their heart isn't there, it feels hollow. I realized that saying I'm scared or I need you isn't weakness. It's bravery. It's the most honest gift you can give another person. Mark and I, well, we're still figuring it out. Some days we move closer, others, we drift apart. Maybe we'll find a way back, or maybe this is where our story ends. But whatever happens, I know this, I don't want to lose myself trying to hold on. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this: love doesn't always look like the movies. Sometimes it's a quiet surrender. Sometimes it's a painful choice. Sometimes it's learning to hold space for someone else's flaws, and your own. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is knowing when to stay and when to let go. So if you ever feel lost between wanting and needing, between closeness and distance, know you're not alone. And that maybe, just maybe, love isn't about perfection, but about being brave enough to keep trying, even when it hurts. Thank you for listening.